You're watching BBN Tonight on your official UK sports station, LEX 18.
Welcome back to BBN Tonight. It's time to evaluate Kentucky football through its first 6 games of the bye week.
We are joined by former Cats Kash Daniel and Jeff Piecoro of the UK Sports Network. Guys, always love having you on. Bring a lot to the table when you talk about this team. Let's talk about this team as a whole. We're at the midway point. Let's start with you, Jeff, and then to you, Kash. Just talk about this team at the midway point, what you've seen from them this season.
Well, obviously start off a little slow. It's tough to start in Auburn for your first game against a team that's a top 10 team, but they had a chance to win the game. Then you go to Ole Miss. You play a game there that you probably should have won that game. You miss an extra point there in overtime. It cost you. I think if they turn that game around, if they win that Ole Miss game, I think people are talking about this totally different. But I still see some shortcomings on this team, especially in the offensive side. And what you guys have talked about, throwing the football. You got to be able to throw the ball. And Kash will tell you this. It makes it so much easier to run the ball if you can throw it. And you can't go through games throwing the ball for 50 yards. You just cannot do it.
Kash, to you, what's kind of your midseason grade here?
Well, I could piggyback off all the things that were just said, but the one thing that that I look at when I look at this team is that they're struggling very hard to find an identity as an offense. It seems like obviously we know that we can run the ball. We have one of the top 5, in my opinion, if you look at all across Power 5 football, a top 5 offensive line across the board. And when that happens, you're allowed to open up those running holes like Chris Rodriguez found last week. You see what he did. Obviously, he had 20 carries, 108 yards, 0 TDs. Looking at it from a defensive perspective, too, seems like, they're really solid. Started off really slow, but, picked things up as Coach White expected them to.
Listen, the defense has given this team an opportunity to win the last couple of games. But offensively, as you guys mentioned, it was a struggle. So I don't know what we're going to have first, a president of the United States or a starting quarterback that we can trust for Kentucky. And Joey Gatewood and Terry Wilson, we don't know yet who is going to be under center when Vandy comes to town.
Well, you know what? I think Kash will tell you this, too. I really don't think it's the quarterback's fault. Have they had a couple of plays where, they could have run it and, pulled and ran on those run-pass option type of plays? Yes, they can. But, just 3 weeks ago, Terry missed, I think, 4 passes in the game. 2 of them were dropped. One of them was a drag where, it's a half inch away from being a catch. So I don't really think the problem has been the quarterback, but I've talked about it all season long, and Kash just brought it up. Identity is so important when you're playing ball. Are you a tough, hard-nosed running team? Are you a wide-open throwing team? This team has no identity, and until they find that, they're just going to be a boat that, is rudderless.
Yeah, thinking what Jeff just said, when you look at what's going on in the quarterback situation, obviously you've got a guy that's highly talked about, highly recruited to come out of high school, and Joey Gatewood, seeing the things that he had a few bright spots at Auburn, big name, big personality. So coming in here expected to play some when you got a guy like Terry, who's a natural-born leader, in my opinion, with this team. This is his team. He's had more success than almost any quarterback that's ever played at the University of Kentucky. And looking at his numbers, just like Jeff said, how much of it is to blame on the quarterbacks itself rather than the drop balls from the receivers, miscommunication from the offensive line, certain things like that. It certainly just cannot come down to one position when you're looking at this offense to see what they have to do to get going.
And Kash, you even said at one point that it showed kind of some desperation when Kentucky was playing more than one quarterback. Do you fully expect to see Terry Wilson under center against Vanderbilt if he's healthy?
So yeah, you looked at what they did against Missouri, coming in with 2 different quarterback series after series, it did show a little panic. And I think that at times, especially as a Kentucky fan, the last thing you want to see, like I mentioned before, you look at Tennessee, we went down and played them. They rotated 3 quarterbacks in and out. You could just see the panic spread all across Tennessee. And so, if it were me, I don't get paid to coach. I was just there to play. But I'm going with the guy that's won me that's won me a Citrus Bowl, and a guy that goes in and knows that it's his team and has respect of his teammates. And so, yeah, Terry would be my guy if I was Coach Stoops, but I'm not.
Jeff, quickly, Vandy comes to town. That should be a win for Kentucky. We always kind of count on that one, but then it's Alabama and Florida. The rest of the games, what's your outlook for the second half of the season?
I think you got to get right in this Vanderbilt game, and I agree with what Kash says. You've got to settle on one quarterback and stick with him. It's too hard when you're juggling quarterbacks. It's a different cadence. It's a different rhythm that the other guys have. So stick with one and go to it, because you can't be juggling quarterbacks when you go 2 weeks and 3 weeks from now against Florida and Alabama. Those defenses will eat you alive.
All right, guys, thanks so much. We appreciate your help throughout the season. We'll be calling on you next week. Coming up next, we return to the subject of UK basketball.
Now, the team's strength coach, Rob Harris, talks about this new group of Cats and what we can expect from them. We'll be right back.